Welcome to the Thoroughly Wrong Project with Lalo and Bob. We appreciate you spending some time with us today. Let's jump right into that weekly dose of things you can disagree with. Take it away, guys.
All right, looks like we are on. All right, cool. Good morning and welcome to the Thoroughly Wrong Project. I don't know. We this is like episode 54, 55. We're doing all right, man. How you doing?
Pretty good. Can't complain.
Well, you could if you want to. Everybody says that. They can't complain. Yeah, you certainly can. It's just and then, the joke, nobody's listening, but everybody is. That's the thing. I think that's the problem with American
No, we don't
the
complain
world
enough.
now. Everybody's complaining, and no
Um,
one's doing anything about it.
I mean, it'd be like that sometimes.
Well, you know
You
what?
just got to get enough people or the right people to complain.
The right
That's when
people.
that's when stuff gets done.
Well, maybe if we didn't call it voting day, we called it complaining day. Everyone would come out.
When is that? That's this week. No, it's Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday.
Damn.
Tuesday. Yeah, we're gonna see the whole thing flip upside down.
I mean, I hope not, but you're probably right.
Well, yeah. I mean, come on, man. You got the Democrats are completely off target now. What's their three? What's their talking points now? Abortion. Um, what are their talking points aren't even plugged in to the common person anymore. I know the working guy, the working girl. They're concerned about abortion and all this stuff, but they want jobs and they want gasoline to drop and they want the economy to be better, but mainly they want jobs that can support their family. Well, guess who's talking about that now? The fucking Republicans. They're talking about bringing back, manufacturing and all this shit. So
See, they've always talked about that,
the
and that's just
Republicans,
the yeah, like about like manufacturing jobs. That was one of Trump's like biggest things like like the coal miners and Detroit and all these like car companies like bringing back jobs.
yeah, well, that used to be the Democrats.
But see, the thing is, those things aren't like a lot of them are getting phased out. Like they're just not coming back. Like they've been automated or they've been like replaced completely to the point where like they'll never come back. So it's
Well,
like when you say, "Oh, we're gonna bring these things back," it's like it's like someone saying, "Oh, we're gonna bring horse carriages back," you know, to the good old days. But it's like some things just don't come back, like
but there
ever.
are things out there that we could bring back, like American steel is now over. All of our steel, all of our raw material goes overseas, and then we buy it back. Why don't we just fucking produce it here? And then the
Because it
argument
would
is
be
like,
more expensive.
well, if we don't do that, Lala, the people. We have this huge thing about education. Well, most of the American population is not educated, and they want jobs that they can support them, that will pay them to support their families. Well, steel jobs would do it. It More manufacturing chips and manufacturing computer parts and manufacturing phones and making fucking shoes here would be a start. And everybody says, well, all the jobs are becoming automated. No, they're not. If you go to China, they're not fucking automated. There's people making shoes, man, and people getting paid, and they're not getting paid very well. But what about if we did bring them back? What about
Um,
if?
I mean, I'm definitely like for it. Like I support that, but I'm saying like the reason they're not back, or the reason it would be hard for them to come back is like money. You know, like it's
Right.
cheaper to have that stuff done somewhere else and then just buy it back than to have it done here, because here you have to pay, healthcare, you have to pay retirement, you have to pay, you know, good wages.
Right. Well,
So
the
it's like the
politicians
people
act
up
like
top.
they didn't sell us out.
I mean, a lot of it's also like the company like itself,
Right.
and I mean, they're not, their best interest is money, saving money, making money.
Right.
So, you
I
know,
get that. I get that. But politics, they sold us out. Everybody sold. They sold out the American dream, man. You
yeah, you
know?
could definitely have things like taxes, like tariffs and stuff like that,
Definitely.
and that would be a way of like the government trying to like persuade and, you know, I don't want to say force, but like just heavily persuade companies to like stay in house and in the United States. But yeah, I mean, if they wanted to, they would do it. That's the thing. If they
So
actually wanted to, they would do it.
we have no jobs here. We have no. You got psychologically. You know, I think people want jobs that, like relationships that count. It makes them feel. It makes us feel like we're
Valuable.
valuable. And flipping hamburgers is, and I know we don't pay enough, and the wages are going up there, but it's still that psychological, that human need to feel valuable. And it's not just the money. It's like when I look back when I used to do things like construction, I worked hard, dude, all day long until I was dead tired. But at the end of the day, I could look back over my shoulder, and that house that I was just building, there's a house there now. When a McDonald's employee walks out of his, he looks back over and he goes, "I just flipped hamburgers. What's valuable about that?"
Yeah, I mean, I've always wondered um, if that like kind of mentality is like exclusive to like the United States. Like, I wonder if I go to like Finland or like Sweden, and are like fast food workers over there, like, are they considered like like low skill or like no skill like wage jobs, to the point where it's like people, because I mean, people like will make fun of you, like, oh yeah, you're just flipping burgers.
Right,
I
right.
wonder if that's the same mentality like in other places.
I
And
you know I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, it's probably not exclusive to the United States, but I feel like there probably are places where that's not the case.
Well, I think Sven over there in Finland, when he looks back over his shoulder and he sees, the 25 feet of ditch that he dug that day because there's going to be a house there or something. I think this is the same thing. I think it's like I'm building something. I'm doing with my hands. I'm I'm constructing something. I'm making a better culture. I'm building houses or apartments or high rises or whatever I'm doing. I think that, and I've worked in factories. I worked in a glass factory for a while, and at the end of the shift, when you left the building, you walked by all the glass you made that day, and there's just something about it.
That's like rewarding.
Yeah, and low wage jobs in retail, things like that. There's no real. I mean, every now and then you get the customer that you really and you feel really good about that, but there's just something about a manufacturing job, and I'm not. You know, there's just something about it, but you just feel like, okay, I'm actually doing something for my culture here.
And I mean, I think the pay has a lot to do with that too, because I mean, let's say you're a welder, or like you were talking about glass manufacturing, and at the end of the day, you look at all the glass or steel
Yeah,
that you welded or whatever, but then you're getting like minimum wage. I feel like that sense of like fulfillment and like reward would not be nearly as much as it is.
yeah, but that
Um,
doesn't that doesn't exist here. I never made minimum wage at a skilled labor
right, but that's
job.
what I'm saying. Like, if the pay was higher at retail stores and fast food places,
Yeah.
I think people at the end of the day, at the end of their, 8 to 10 hour shift, they're not gonna feel like it's just another fucking day at work.
Yeah.
They might feel like more like self-fulfilled, or like, I did something today,
Yeah. That-
not so mundane.
Yeah, like when I drive across the United States, the last time I drove across the United States, I drove through by this place where I hauled for almost 6 months. I hauled a bunch of shit as a truck driver, and I always look at that building. And my dad does the same thing. He did the same thing. I always looked at that building and thought, I hauled all the shit to build that building. That building's there because what I did, and I made shit money. I made $600 a week though, doing it, but it was the only work that I could get as a truck driver at the time. So the money wasn't there like I wanted it to be. It was enough to support me and my family, but the thing that I got out of it is that fucking building is there because of me. And that's a good feeling. So as we wander through, as the fast food worker wanders through the mall, does he think all these people are fat because of me? No, he doesn't. So I think we need more jobs that are humanly fulfilling, psychologically fulfilling. And we've been sold out, man. All those jobs are gone. I mean, we're still having workers here building our buildings, and that's a cool thing. My father-in-law's a carpenter, and he takes great pride in what he does, and that's cool. But I don't think the person selling trinkets at Walmart or any. I don't think any Walmart employee feels fucking fulfilled in the way that a manufacturing job does.
Yeah, probably not. But I also think like those jobs are like we need them regardless of anything.
Sure,
Like we need fast food workers, we need janitors, we need,
we
retail
do.
store employees, whatever, whatever. So it's like if we're gonna need these jobs, like, because I mean, if we didn't have, like, if everybody just quit from like fast food like today, um, like it would make a huge impact, on like even the way people live. Like,
Right.
imagine if all Starbucks employees just quit
Don't
overnight.
say that, Lalo. Don't say that. Say
um,
McDonald's. Don't say Starbucks
like
because you hurt my feelings.
I think people will say like, or people think that it's like, like they clown on them and shit on them, like, oh, just flipping burgers or whatever. But it's like if they weren't there, like it would literally impact your life, like most people very directly.
Yeah,
You know. So with that being said, because they are needed, because they are necessary, I think it's important to kind of recognize that, and then in turn, like, advocate for them to be, paid well.
I agree, and
The
that's
same thing with like farm workers, like people like, oh, like you work in the fields or whatever, like they say like it's a very demeaning job, but I mean our society would absolutely crumble without agriculture workers.
right, right.
And it's like people, it's almost like they don't get that, you know because all they see is like the job itself. They don't see what comes from it, and what like impact it really does have, like in our day-to-day lives.
I think isn't there some pride in that though, in that job, and working in the field?
I mean, from all the I've never worked in the fields, but I know a lot of people that have. And for them, I mean, from what I've talked to people, it's very like it's just hard labor.
Yeah, that's
Like,
my son did it
but
for
but I don't
two
think it's
weeks.
like I don't think they like look at the end of the day, be like, oh yeah, you see that big old 18 wheeler, like I fill that up with oranges.
Yeah,
Like I know they're very like production based, like their income.
you're right. The
So like
more
the more you pick, like
the
the
more you
more you
make.
get. Right. um but I don't think it's like a sense of like rewarding, just because it's so like physically demanding, to the point where most people when they get off work, it's like they're just drained,
Yeah, my kid did
and
it for
it's
a
not
couple
nearly
weeks, and he
enough.
was
Like,
like, "Nuh-uh, I can't do that."
Yeah, and the pay, like, regardless, you could pick, you could pick a whole truck full. Like, your pay is not gonna like reflect the amount of like work that you did, if that makes sense. Or
Right.
the energy exerted and the amount that you put on yourself, like the strain. Um, like, there's no way it makes up for that.
That's too bad. It should, because that's a that's in the top three jobs that's important in America, man. You know, the food.
Yeah,
That's where it comes from. But you
and I
know, the
mean that's
guy
what I'm
that,
saying. People don't recognize that.
yeah, I get you're right, and we should. But there, I keep saying it, man. We've been sold out here. We've got this idea now that it, when I went to work in the late 70s, and my friends, I went to work as a dishwasher, was my first real job in a 5-star restaurant, and I had friends who were working in fast food and donut shops and all the shit that we did when we were in high school. But our jobs were a way for us to make money, to have a car, and to make those stepping stones towards life. And I never, I never looked at that job as a dishwasher, and my friends who were working in fast food at the time, we never looked at those jobs as this is going to be my job. We looked at those jobs as a way to get to better jobs. And that's what it did. I worked as a dishwasher, and then I kept looking for work, and then I found work as a day laborer in a construction company. And I went to work in construction, and I left that life behind me. And I think I would never go back and work fast food, dude. Never. It, when I was growing up, fast food places were filled with high school kids, and I know today that we look at it like you have mentioned it before, like everybody thinks this is for high school kids. Well, there's a reason that we think that way, because when I was coming of age, those jobs were for high school kids to make that leap into adulthood, to get our car, to get, a way of making money and learning how to manipulate our bank accounts and do all the things that we need to do in order to go to school or go to the military or get a better job in manufacturing. So nowadays, 40 years later, there's still a large portion of the population that looks at those jobs as those should be for high school kids. And that's why we think like that. But
Yeah,
now they're not like that, because all the fucking jobs that are well paying, and they're gone. You can't get them anymore.
yeah. No, I mean that. I think that mentality is very like flawed because um when you like kind of like boil down, all these jobs to like, oh, they're just, stepping stones. And I mean, I do agree that, for a lot of people they are, for a lot of people it's like their first job, like,
Right.
oh, I'm just gonna work at, Macy's or McDonald's or whatever. um for a lot of people, yeah, it's their, they tend to be younger and, it's their first job. But there are people that work at these places for, years on end, or like retire from them.
Right. But
And
they
you're always gonna,
became manager. You should become manager or fucking owner.
but
You
I mean, even
shouldn't.
then, like, I don't like, even if it sounds like being complacent or like stale or something, I don't think that someone who like works full time and like, let's say, just chooses to be like a, I don't even know what like the title is, but like just a, regular like fast food employee, you know.
A line worker.
Yeah. um like, even let's like say that they are lazy, like, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to really care to promote. I don't want to go to school, but, I'll do this like for 40 hours a week for, 10, 15 years. Like, I don't mind that. um I don't think you should punish that person with like poverty, you know. Like, does it, is it a bad thing? I mean, that's subjective. You know, do you hope most people would want to like promote or like move on to something better? Like, yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people do that.
Right.
They have like bigger aspirations, or they want to, oh, it's only like a summer job or whatever. But there are people, with varying degree of like circumstances. There's like single moms. There's elderly people that just had a bad break. There's people from all different like walks of life that for whatever reason they might benefit from you know staying in this one position for a while. Like, I don't think you should punish them and be like, okay, well, you're going to be poor for the rest of your life.
I, I agree. I agree. But here's what I'm saying. I'm not
And I don't think that's most people. Like, that's a small percentage of people. So I don't think like basing an idea around like the smaller, like the minority, is like a good thing, you know?
right. I agree. All I'm telling you is where it came from.
Yeah.
Okay, it comes from a time when our economy was built on you can find a better job. And now our economy is built on everything went overseas, everything's shut down, everything's automated, and you have this mentality of, you know, you should do better for yourself when you fucking can't. The opportunity isn't there anymore. Your only opportunity left, and I'm not saying, I'm not being conclusive here. I'm just saying in a general way, the only opportunity you have is to go to school and saddle yourself with a fucking debt that you can never pay off. So I'm going to get a better job, but a large portion of the money that I'm making now has to go back into um, the the pathway that I got to this better job. That's not how it fucking worked when I was growing up. You just got a better job. You just kept looking and looking and looking until you found a better job. And then I bucked plywood for fucking 6 months, man, and carrying 4 and 5 sheets of plywood up a ladder all fucking day long until my boss was like, "Hey, man, do you want to learn how to frame?" Fuck yeah, I want to learn how to frame. Hey, man, do you want to learn how to roof? Fuck yeah, I want to do that. And it just keeps building, building, building. My son right now is suffering through a 5-year internship to become an electrician. So he's in year one, or he's getting ready to enter into year two, and he has worked to death. But he's getting a debt. He's accruing a debt. And here it comes. And you keep thinking, man, someday I'm going to make $50 an hour. Fuck no, you're not going to make $50 an hour. You're going to make $30 an hour because 20 of it's going back towards your debt for a long ass time. And so should we punish people for, working those jobs? No. Should we fucking punish people for trying to get out of those jobs? No, but we do anyway. The economy here, it's just we're up against the wall, man. No matter what we do, we're saddled with debt or poor wages. What's the choice here, man?
Yeah, it's kind of you're like in a pickle there.
Hmm. As we go, here we go. And then I think on top of that, we've got this thing where we're trying to say everyone has should have equal opportunity when they don't. And we it's just, dude, I'm just this radical right, this Donald Trump, and above him is just the same as the radical left. It's just a pushback against what's happening in the middle. Everybody was like, well, we got to vote for Obama because he's going to make our lives better, and he didn't. Okay, so now we got to vote for Donald Trump because he's going to make our lives better, but he's not. And the thing is, we keep swinging back and forth with these radical right, radical left, radical right, and it's not working. We need to have some moderates in the middle who are saying, okay, let's figure out a way to get jobs back in the United States. Let's figure out a way to stop worrying about globalism. And I'm not saying we need to close off the borders. I'm not saying that. But we need to start worrying a little bit more about ourselves and less about this global, situation that's crumbling all around the world. We got to take care of ourselves, dude, and we're not doing it. And I think Donald Trump is just a knee jerk reaction to the radical left. And when that fails, you're going to see a knee jerk reaction against the radical right and back towards the radical left. I don't think we're ever going to
Yeah,
normalize.
it's always very like back and forth. And but I think that's almost by design, but
Yeah.
not like by our design, but by the politicians' design. Like they intentionally like don't get shit done because um then people will expect a lot from them, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they kind of just like, I wouldn't even say do the bare minimum, but like they tell you all these things they're going to do. So you vote for them. So, people vote for them, but then they don't do it. So then, the other side just does the same thing. And it's just back and forth. But it's just like for them, it's a thing of like power. Like they want
Yeah.
to stay in office. Um,
Do you really think that the American population that I know a lot of Trump supporters, and I'm not going to say, let's not even say that. I know a lot of Republicans, and they're apologetic about Donald Trump. And my father in law will say to you, I don't like his fucking personality. I think he's a monster, but we cannot continue on the path we're on. And I wholeheartedly agree with him. And from the bottom of my heart, I'm like, we can't go on doing what we're doing. But at the same time, I don't think that he's the right path. But I don't see many politicians out there who are the right path for us. I don't see many moderates anymore. And then when you do see them, they're silenced quickly because when you have the radical left movement that we have today, which is equality for all, equal pay, equal rights, Gijur. We have all this,
but
and
see, that doesn't sound radical at all.
well, it is when you're talking about a population of people that a large portion of the population is between 40 and 60. So we're coming out of the 70s and 80s, and a lot of that shit. And not to me, I'm telling you, I hate the word woke, but I'm not woke as much as I am aware. I'm aware of the situation. I know where all this shit comes from, and I realize what the pushback is. But a large portion of the population is not educated, Lalo. They're not. They didn't go to liberal colleges. They didn't get liberal ideas. They don't know how to write. They don't know how to uh, approach
Think critically.
problems. Do what?
I said think critically.
Think critically. Okay. So you have a huge portion of the population that looks at people who are progressive and ultra progressive, and they go, "Holy shit, that's not what I want. That actually threatens my way of life. I don't want, when I personally go overseas, when I go to France, I don't, I wouldn't go to India and have a fucking barbecue. All right? Because that the Indian way of life doesn't allow that. And I'm like, that's cool. So when people come into our lives and they're like, you're going to call me by this pronoun, you're going to do that. And those older people are like, wait a fucking minute. Your your values are fine. Go hang out with people of your values. Decentralize. Stop this globalization and decentralize everything and hang out with your people, and I'll hang out with my people, and we'll get along that way. But stop forcing me to agree with you. and stop forcing me to do the things that I don't want to fucking do or I don't want to say. And that's not the way I think. So we have this, and here comes the Thoroughly Wrong Project like a fucking train, man. I don't think that what the radical left is doing is going to solve problems. It's not going to create equality because it's so in your face and so radical that most of the population is just pushing back against it.
See, for me, I feel like one, it's not very like, and I know you said like you don't really think it's like that radical, but a lot of people do, you know.
Right.
Um, but to me, I think it's very like, it's like we're at the point where it's like people are demanding change, you know, in a lot of different like sectors, you know, social issues, economical issues, to the point where it's not like, let's say you're like, someone has you like locked up in their basement, right?
Mm-hmm.
For like 5 years, and they feed you once a day, and then after like, you know, the 5 years, you're like begging them like, can I have more food, please? um so they tell you, okay, we're gonna feed you once a day and then give you a snack like in between. Like, there's two ways to look at that, you know. You can say, oh well, okay, thank you, like that's, you know, that's more food. Or you can look at it and be like, well, it's still not enough, you know. And if you have the ability to make it enough, like to get more, are you going to just take the little extra crumbs that they give you? Or are you going to try to get, you know, 3 meals a day? And I think that's what people would consider to be the radical left, is that they're trying to do all these things, you know, but it's like these things are long overdue. And that's what happens when you kind of hold things back from people. Um, and then, you know, it's it's hard to like, it's hard for people to be complacent when you're like, when you're giving them like crumbs every time they like ask for, you know, a whole meal. So when they do get that whole meal, or when they're asking for that whole meal, you're like, whoa, take it easy. But it's like, no, like that's how it should be. That's how it should have been from the very beginning, you know. And
What?
I think that's why people like, I mean, one, people in general are afraid of change, but like big change, like that terrifies them, you know.
Right. And
But
so what
that
happens is
fear,
Donald Trump.
that fear, yeah, that's true. But that fear shouldn't like prevent us from being, you know, like having equal rights, having fair wages. Like those aren't those aren't radical ideas. Like that's not something crazy like out of left field. It's how things should have been from the beginning. And if they were there from the beginning, or if we were at least like on a steady like climb towards like actual equality, you know, people wouldn't be asking for like, you know, big portions, because you would, it would be kind of like, um you know, it's like the minimum wage. Like, oh, it was like seven something and then it jumped to $15.
Right.
It's like, whoa, that's a lot. Like, you know,
Well,
we can't
that's
afford
because it
that.
didn't move in 25 years
Right. So
when
imagine
it
if it
should have
had
been
been
moving
moving.
incrementally towards 15, and then we would have been
Exactly.
fine.
So I mean, that same, you can apply that same like logic or way of thinking to like most issues, you know, where they held it back for so long, to
Well,
when you finally like ask for it and demand for it and fight for
right.
it, they're like, whoa, you know, that's way too much.
But you're
But it's
talking
like,
about
no.
shoulds and oughts, okay? And those are completely different. Those are ideals that people push back against. You cannot. Here's my problem with the radical left. You cannot call everything systemically evil. You cannot do that, bro. You can't say capitalism is systemically evil, corporatism is systemically evil, raise the United States is systemically racist. The United States is systemically unfair. You start to pull down the very ideals that the generation that built this fucking country for what it is today, the
But it
last one, you start to pull them down. You start to call them evil. The things you've done are fucking evil. Well, if we're so fucking evil, why do we have civil rights? And why do we have gay rights? And why do we have all these rights that my
well
generation
those
fucking created?
but those rights aren't
They're not
like
enough.
they weren't created or they weren't given because of the original ideals of this country, if that makes sense. Because if they were, they would have been there from the beginning. There's a
Well,
reason slavery is not mentioned in the Constitution at all.
right. I agree. But slavery doesn't exist anymore.
But slavery didn't stop existing because of people like, you know, uh, the founding fathers, or like, civil rights didn't come about because of, you know, old people in the 60s. It's always like the newer younger generations that kind
Right.
of, they see how their grandparents, they see how their parents
And
grew
that
up, and they're
newer,
like, that's
younger
fucked up.
generation is now me, brother. It's me. It was my generation that did it. It was the
Right. So
younger
I'm saying
generation.
that
Now we
that
got old,
so I think
and
that
now you're calling us evil.
well, I think that like sentiment, if anything, should be more um like understanding, or not understanding, but like that sentiment should seem more familiar to, you know, like you guys, because you kind of felt the same way, during civil rights, during women's suffrage. Like
Right.
people felt like, this is not right. This is not how things should be. We're gonna fight to change the things. Fight to change like the status quo.
We should, and I agree, and I am,
And
and
that's
I.
what people were doing back in the 60s. They were calling people racist. They were calling
That's
people
why I'm
hood.
doing what I'm doing now with the podcast and talking to people and voting and doing all the things that I do. That's me. But my problem is here's me, part of the generation that the up and coming generation is calling evil.
Well, yeah, I mean, because that's just
That's
like
not
an
right.
overgeneralization.
Right.
And you're always gonna have that. It's not like, because I mean, it's not like everybody in the 60s was for civil rights. You still had a huge portion, probably half at least,
Well, you got
that
half again
was against it.
now.
And I mean, I don't think like those like broad statements shouldn't be taken like personally, because they're not like, if you were to talk to them, they wouldn't direct them like at you, you know? Or like if you were to, if they tell you like if people like young people, they're like shitting on like the baby boomers,
Hmm. And
uh
they are.
just because you are a baby boomer doesn't mean it's directed at you, because behind that, headline statement, there's like specific points, like they're talking to the baby boomers that, did all this like terrible shit.
I,
And like,
okay.
knowing that you didn't do it, I don't think it would, like, I don't think it should at least like affect you that personally.
But
Like
it
me,
does,
like,
man. That's psychological. Come on.
well, yeah, but I'm saying um like let's say like for me, like there's like this big like thing in like Hispanic culture with like men being very like machista, and you
Yeah.
know um like was it like hyper masculine, and like, you know
Machismo.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when people say that, me being, a Hispanic man, I'm not gonna be like, oh, actually, that's not me, or this is what I do to like prevent that. Like in my head, I know that's not, that I don't like fit that stereotype, so I'm able to like take that statement and like agree with them, because I know there's a large like portion of people that are like that, um, without feeling like attacked. And I think because you feel attacked, like when people do feel attacked, the first thing you do is, like, I think naturally is like to fight back,
I think the
Um,
first thing you do is find other people that feel attacked.
yeah, and but you feel attacked. So I mean, when someone feels attacked, like in general, you kind of you want to defend yourself and get out of that situation. So when someone tells you like, oh, uh, all like Hispanic men are like this, blah blah. I think the natural like reaction is like, oh, well, wait a minute, like I'm not like this or blah blah blah. But I think that kind of sets it up for more like division.
Uh-huh.
I
And
think,
that's why we're here today.
yeah, but I think, I mean, it's just my opinion, but I think a better way to approach things would be, um, like when you're not part of a certain group, but you agree with them or you like advocate for them. Um, I think it's always best to like first like support them, and then like everything else comes later. Like I'm for like gay and trans rights, but I don't go up to them and be like, hey, I'm not gay, but I support you guys. You know.
How about instead of attacking an entire generation, you attack the specific people that are doing it and leave out the others?
But
How
I
about
think those
that?
attacks are very like those are like the headline statements, or like the protest sign.
Right, but the headline statements bleed down and the protest statements bleed down into the general population, and the people that buy into that begin to attack a certain group of people. And they do it insidiously, man, like in the little ways that there's nothing I can do about. Okay, for instance, there's nothing you can do about your language, bro. But in the Spanish language, if there's 10,000 fucking women and one woman is holding a baby boy, that crowd is addressed masculine. Okay? That's a
Hmm.
fact. Can you do anything about that? No, but you get some little prick out there who's like, well, your language just attacks us. It's like, well, I didn't fucking do that. How can I change an entire language? Well, you're part of that culture. And this is what I hear all the time. I'm part of that culture. I'm part of that generation. Well, listen, man, I don't agree with Donald Trump. I don't agree with a lot of politicians. I don't agree with anti gay sentiment. I don't agree with anti trans sentiment. But there's really nothing that I can do on a big scale to change my fucking generation. I can only change me. So when I change, you need to soften your stance against me. Otherwise, I feel attacked. And when I feel attacked, I'm going to find other people that are like, that little prick right there will attack you because you're part of this generation. Yeah, I know. So let's gang up on him, or let's make friends and exclude that person. And that's why we have this 50-50 split. And that's why I say Donald Trump and this right-wing conservative craziness is just a pushback against these attacks. You're trying to change our culture in my own home. And I don't need that. I don't need to change the culture in my own home. You need to stay out of my home, is what you need to do. As long as I come to work and come out into the culture and I don't treat you badly and I'm polite to you and I'm kind to you and I'm empathetic and I help you up when you fucking fall down, what's in my head is what's in my head. And I'm allowed to keep that.
Well, I don't think the culture, like the push to change culture, is like goes all the way down to um, like no one's asked, like they're not people aren't asking to like change your like what goes on in your house. Like people are free to live how they want. Um, so I don't think
Lalo,
there's
come on,
many.
dude.
I don't think there's a lot of like push to like change like your individual like in your house type of stuff. Because like I can't think of anything that's like people are saying to like change within.
Holidays.
Huh?
Religion, holidays, religion.
Right, but no one's gonna come be like banging on your door like, why do you guys have a Christmas tree up? You know? That doesn't change your like how you live your personal life.
Well, let's not say that they're coming to my house, but when you
But see,
are
and even then, like that's not a like if you go to the store and it says Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas, like I never understood why that offends people. Like it's not changing anything. You can still get pictures with Santa at the mall. You
right,
can still buy wrapping paper. You can still buy gifts. There's still, ugly Christmas sweaters. Like what's changing? Actually changing? Nothing.
I wish you could
Instead of a
get
Christmas sale, they
inside.
say holiday sale.
I wish you could get inside of 60-year-old's mind. But
No, I get it. Like I
oh,
understand
okay,
why they're
that's
upset.
that's all I want you to say.
But I'm just saying like,
You have to have an understanding. And if
yeah,
we
and I
all
get
had
it.
an understanding, then this would calm down
But
immediately.
if like I understand it, but what's with that understanding, like what would be the proper like response then? Should we not change it?
How about you can why not both, man?
Well, you can't change and not change something. I don't think
I
you have
like
that
those
both ways.
signs at those art and craft stores that say happy holidays, merry christmas, happy hanukkah. They have all of it on the sign. That's inclusionary. That works. That lets me say merry christmas. That lets you say happy hanukkah. But when you tell
See, to me, that's
people,
not even like a big deal. Like
well,
happy holidays, like there's a bunch of holidays in December and November.
I
Like,
get it.
why does it
I
matter?
totally get it, but you've got to understand it is threatening to some people, and you can
Mhm.
soften your fucking stance by, instead of saying, we don't say Merry Christmas here, we say Happy Holidays. Okay, same. In my house, we say Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa.
But see, even
Who
then,
gives a
like
fuck?
I don't think that's a thing that happened. Like, um,
This is just one example.
no, I know,
There's
but I'm
all
saying like
kinds of
that's
things that
not.
we're doing to
I
change the language.
Yeah, but I think like the way, like even the way you're presenting it right now, where it's like, we don't say Merry Christmas, we say Happy Holidays. Like that doesn't happen a lot. Like you'll just have people like you'll walk into the store and they'll be like, oh, like Happy Holidays. Or when you're leaving, they'll be like, okay, Happy Holidays. And then it's the person, the customer that turns around and is like, I say Merry Christmas.
Right.
So it's not like,
It's
um,
happening, though.
but not.
Even if it doesn't happen very often, dude, it's happening. It's part of our culture to be contentious now. And the
I don't know.
reason
To
it's
me,
part of our
those
culture to be
types of things are
contentious is
very like I don't really try to like invalidate people's like feelings and stuff, but to me,
right,
like not a valid reason to get upset. And a lot of people could flip it and be like, "Well, why are you upset that everything says Merry Christmas?"
right.
But to me, that's very different than you know one one side is being all inclusive, while the other is like being the opposite of inclusive. And I think that's a very big difference. It's like if um, something small like all the Barbies are like white, you know,
Right.
and then a
There
little
was a
black
flesh
like
colored crayon when I was in first grade.
right. So like let's say all the Barbies are like white, and little black girls are like, how come none of these dolls look like me? What
Right.
what is if a girl wants a doll, what is she forced to do? If a little black girl wants a doll, what's she forced to do? If that's the case,
But we're
you're
not that.
forced to buy a white doll.
That
But
changed.
yeah, I know I'm saying. But now that things are changing and you could buy a doll of any color, what what are people forcing on anyone? No one's being forced to buy the black doll.
But let's go back in
People are
time
giving the choice.
when that happened. Let's go back in time when that happened. Black Barbie came in, and flesh colored crayons were, and it was almost, it was so, it was subtle. It was like, here, you know what? We're wrong. We're going to take away the flesh colored crayon. We're going to call it salmon now. And there is no flesh colored crayon. And nobody was like, where's the fucking flesh colored crayon? No one did that. And no one was like, a few bigots made jokes about Black Barbie, but no one stood up and said, you have to have Black Barbie. You have to have it. You have to change the language. You have to do this. You have to do that. There was not, it was just this subtle, oh, fuck, man, we fucked up. You know, but instead of, and using the very trite example of Merry Christmas, it didn't come in like, oh man, we fucked up. We should as a culture start saying happy holidays. But instead, it came in as this contentious, fuck you. It's not Merry Christmas. It's Happy Holidays. And that's what we're going to say from now on. And people were like, well, wait a fucking minute. Don't tell me what to do.
But see, I don't think that's true at all. I don't think it came in as that
You don't
way.
remember the fight over Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays?
I think that fight was created by the right. Like
Who,
that outrage, that fake outrage was created by the right.
right, Lalo, right, man. But it was still a thing. It was still real. It was still happening.
Well, like what was happening was like
Nobody waved black
things
and white
started.
Barbie and said, this is wrong.
Well, no one said Merry Christmas is wrong. They
Yes,
just
they
said
did, bro.
oh, we're just gonna say Happy Holidays because it's more inclusive. And then from that, people said, what's wrong with saying Merry Christmas?
Hmm.
I think that's what happened.
No, nobody came up and said, what's wrong with just keeping Barbie white? Nobody. I never heard
Well, a lot of
one
people
thing.
actually did say that.
I
They
never
said,
heard anybody say that.
well, but a lot of people were like, well, it's like even with like superheroes, like, oh, why do you have to, make Spider-Man black? Just create your own superhero and make him black.
And they did. They
And
did.
it's like,
Black
but,
Panther. There you go.
but I'm saying like, it's very, like, I think that outrage was one created like artificially and two created by the right
Okay, if
because
I
they needed
rain
like,
on you, if it rains on you and it's a natural rain, is it a rain? Yes. If I fly a plane over and see the clouds and that rain is unnatural, is it fucking rain, dude? No matter how it's created, whether it's unnatural or natural or created by the media or created by Karen or thought up by a fucking beaver, it doesn't matter. It's in our culture now. And we have this contentious,
right, but the
hateful.
argument was falsely created. Like people weren't saying fuck Merry Christmas, I'm going to say Happy Holidays. Like that's not the narrative of how it like rolled out.
No, it's the opposite. Fuck
People were
happy
just like,
holidays is what they said. I'm going to say Merry Christmas and I'm going to continue to say it. And you can't force me
but
to
here,
say
let me ask
happy
you this. Let me
holidays
ask you this. Why are people upset?
because they don't like change.
But like but like on a more like specific level.
Fear. Fear that they're somehow you are altering their way of life, the one that they chose. Right or wrong, I chose my life. And a lot of people, approximately 50% of us according to polls, don't want that. They don't want that. So Donald
Well,
Trump
not
comes
wanting
along and says,
change.
I'm going to change it back.
Well, I don't
Uh,
think not wanting change is a reason to not change. Because we change is inevitable. And then a lot in most like as a society usually it tends to be in a positive way because it's more progressive.
I, I'm with you, man. I'm totally on your side. I'm simply offering you the reason of why this is happening to
Well, no,
us.
I get it. Like I understand all their like where their frustration and like anger comes from. I just don't think it's valid. Or I don't think it's enough of a reason to like I don't know, like I don't know, compromise, I guess.
Right. But do
Um
you think it's enough of a reason to attack people on Twitter and attack people, their political value, just attack them, not come in and say, "Man,
Well,
I totally get it."
it depends what those views are. It depends, like if you don't like, it depends on what issue you're talking about. Like, if, are you gonna attack someone because they say Merry Christmas? No, most people don't. Most people don't get attacked at all because they say Merry Christmas. But
Right.
when you're like, oh yeah, fuck gay people and trans people, you guys are like groomers or whatever. And then there's like kids like killing themselves every day because of people thinking that way.
Right.
I would say an attack is more validated in that sense. Yes,
That causes people to push back harder.
and I mean that's normal. But at the same time, like, um, I'd rather have like an angry Karen like Republican than like a dead teenager that was bullied to death.
As would I. No argument with you there. But let's say I go to therapy and I am and I'm vehemently against gay people or vehemently against trans people, and I say that in a therapy session. Does my therapist attack me? No, never. Your therapist says, "Listen, we need to talk about your feelings in a calm, rational way."
Yeah, but I think
But
that
hitting
setting
me
is
with a
vastly
fucking
different.
sign, if I'm like anti-gay and I'm out there, Jesus wasn't fucking gay, and you come up and you hit me with your fucking sign, I'm gonna hit you back, and then that's
Well,
gonna
that's not really a therapy session. I
that's
think
gonna.
the setting is very
I'm
different.
just saying we need to therapeutically approach people, because if I hit you with my sign because what your sign says, you are just validating my feelings. See, I fucking told you. I took a sign out there that said Jesus wasn't gay and I got attacked. I told you so. But if I take a sign out there that says Jesus wasn't gay, and I'm approached and it's like, yeah, Jesus wasn't gay, but Jesus, you know, loved gay people. And if you're gonna bring that to the table, let's talk about how Jesus felt. Not fuck your
But see,
religion
you
and
can't
fuck
really
you.
have those types of conversations like in a protest setting because it's a protest. Like protests aren't meant to like sit down and talk about things.
Right, but when I am a bigot and I say bigoted things, that is metaphorically me waving a sign. And you need to approach a bigot with a softer stance.
See, that's not. I don't always. I don't think that's always like the way to approach things.
Like
Because
I
at the end
said,
of
you're
the day,
validating the
at the
bigot's
end of
feelings,
at the end of the day, like they're the bigot.
right?
It's like they're in the wrong. It's like being sympathetic. I mean, it's not a direct comparison, but I want to say it's like um it's like a slave owner that like loses all their slaves because like the Emancipation Proclamation, and it's like, okay, well, let's take it easy on them because they just lost all their property.
I'm not, you can't,
Because I
I'm
always
not
think
saying
there's,
take it easy on him, bro. I'm
well, you're
not
saying
saying
being
take it easy.
sympathetic,
I'm
and I
not
don't.
saying
I
be
think there's.
sympathetic. I'm
You just
saying
said be sympathetic.
you can have your you can have
I
your
think
way of thinking.
I think you can be sympathetic to the person, but not to the ideas
Okay.
that that person has.
So if I'm beating you back, am I being sympathetic to the person?
Like beating you back, like literally, like physically,
No,
or like just braiding you, like you're a
just
fucking bigot.
berating another person. Like I'm going to berate you because you're gay. You're gay. You're going to berate me because I'm a bigot. Is that solving anything, bro?
Um,
So the
I mean,
person
in
that's
the
in the
moment,
wrong needs to
no.
be brought out into the light. And if you
And
look
how
at
would
a
that
person,
happen though?
I don't know, but what we've got so far is not working, Lalo.
Well, I think it comes back to one of those things where it's like through exposure,
Okay.
and a lot of that exposure comes, especially
So
with social issues, comes with like laws and government intervention. You know, just like in the '60s with desegregation, the government had to force the schools to accept, all these black kids because it wasn't going to come from them. They were forced to do it. And even what, 60 years later, you go to the South, it's still hella racist. So that like slow play kind of thing, like has it progressed? Of course, absolutely. You know,
Right.
but is it,
There's no more
some
lynchings
people don't want to wait 60
occasionally.
years for a small amount of progress.
Sometimes you don't have a fucking choice.
But sometimes you do, and that's what they're fighting for.
How did Gandhi take back India?
Um, I know nothing about Gandhi, to be honest.
Peaceful protest. Peaceful. He was so anti-violence that it was phenomenal.
Yeah, but the
And
whole like peaceful protest thing, like it's very uh like it's been done. Like how many times? Did
right.
Colin Kaepernick hit somebody or like incite violence?
Well, everybody takes a hit, bro. In a peaceful protest, every people take a hit. People died in India. They beat them to death in front of other peaceful protesters. They died. So Kaepernick took a hit and he lost his job. But do you see professional athletes taking a knee today? Yes, you do. Do they lose their job? No, they don't. So his peaceful protest, he took the
But has
hit.
anything actually changed?
What was the protest about?
Police brutality?
His police brutality dropped.
Probably not.
Are we more
At
aware
least
of it?
not since
And are cops who get
2012.
caught doing it going to jail? Yes, they are.
But for the most part, no.
You can't stop something like that in its tracks.
Well,
It,
you could
it's
try though.
with more violence. No, it doesn't work that way for me. I try
I mean,
never.
like I don't like I always see violence as like a last resort type of thing, you know? Um
But a lot of people don't see it that way.
yeah, but
That's you and me.
because a lot of people, we're not um neither of us are like in the group of people that, like, we're not black. We haven't had that experience of, hey, a cop pulls you over and it's like, oh, your lights out, but I'm going to search your whole fucking car actually.
Actually, I have been in that situation for not being black. I moved from California to West Virginia, and I had shoulder length hair, and I was driving a Volkswagen Beetle. And my daughter and I got pulled over 22 times in less than 2 months. My car got searched twice completely, and I never got mad. I just understood what was going on. I was in a culture. I was in a culture that acted that way. But as time went on, more and more people accepted me. Less and less cops pulled me over because they weren't intimidating me, but a lot of them antagonized me to try to get me to do something that they could go, okay, see, I told you, I pulled his long haired ass over for a reason because I knew he was going to fucking be this way. And see, I proved him right, but I never proved him right. And that's what Gandhi said. Don't fucking prove him right. And that's where I stand. And that's why we're the Thoroughly Wrong Project. Because and I love our I love our juxtaposition on these issues, man, because I you are part of the generation that's pushing and pushing and pushing, and yet your understanding of why they're pushing and your understanding of why the other side. And I'm on the other side that's getting pushed, and I understand why I'm being pushed. And that's beautiful. That's where we need to be, Lalo. We need to talk about these things instead of berating each other and you're a faggot and all the things that we do, fucking boomer. Yeah, none of this is solving anything. None of those things, calling me a boomer or calling you a, trans, whatever terminology we've come up with to attack other people without actually punch them in the face. And caught in the middle are the kids that you talk about, that those metaphoric punches in the face time and time and time again drive them to suicide. And nobody ever laid a fucking hand on most of them. So we need to stop with our incendiary language. We need to back away from that and say, okay, let's think about this. That's where I'm coming from. We need to stop with the violence. We need to stop with the sarcasm and the bullshit. And everybody needs to calm the fuck down and stop. You know, my side's looking at Trump as some sort of savior from all this, what they consider radical thought. And Bernie Sanders and those people are on the other side saying, it's this clash in the middle that we need to talk about. And we need to stop reading the incendiary comments that come from social media and from the regular media and television and newspapers and all the writers who are writing all this shit that's just like to rile up people. We need to stop it. We need to discuss it and stop blaming each other and understand more, like you and I just did for an hour and 6 minutes. We understood each other. We said some things that other people would just freak out about, but you and I are like, no, we get it. I get it. Let's talk about what we understand, and let's come to an understanding here that yes, you need more rights. Yes, you need more money. That's fucking obvious. And here's how we can, do that. We need to talk about it more, bro. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Um, I think it's just a different mentality, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
not only from like generation to generation, from like, but also from like group to group,
Right.
because um, like it's your mindset and your mentality is very different depending on which side you're on.
Sure.
And I think sometimes that itself plays into like the way we like would want to approach things, you know? It's like a real quick like a example. Like if let's say you would go back to like slavery, you know?
Right.
Um if like let's say at the like you saw the light at the end of the tunnel, like you knew at some point slavery was going to be abolished and you were um a slave, I could understand them being very like urgent and
Mm-hmm.
wanting to like revolt and like let's do get this done now.
Let's do it now.
But at the same time, when you're the slave owner, you're like, hey, don't, you guys are gonna be free at some point. Don't fucking come kill me. You know,
Right.
don't break it, don't, burn my house down. But at the same, can you see how that those two different mindsets kind of like they differ depending on what side. Like I'm sure that slave owner was probably, hey, like let's sit down and like talk about like your conditions of release, or like let's
Right.
take this like peacefully. um but at the same time, like on the other side you have a bunch of slaves that are like have lived a life of being slaves, and they're just fed up with it,
Can
and
we
they're
talk
like,
about the third group? What's the third group here?
I don't know, like
Neither the
everybody else.
slave nor the slave owner, who do not have the experience of either one and yet choose sides. And those sides are chosen on the actions of the slaves and the actions of the slave owner. So when I have this belief system that if I let the slaves go, they're going to revolt, and they revolt before they're let go, I go, yep, there it is. They're violent. I can't let them go. It's so fucking sad that if I'm neither actor in the scenario, and yet I place myself in that and I make judgment calls based on, you know, I'm not 20 years old, I'm not trans, I'm not gay, I'm not any of those things, and yet here I stand, almost forced to choose sides.
But see, to me, those two sides are the oppressed and the oppressor.
Right, but what if I'm neither, bro? I can't
No, but I'm
understand
saying
that
you have to.
situation.
If you were to choose a side, you have two options. You have the oppressed to choose the oppressed side, or to choose the oppressor side.
I totally agree, but when the oppressed becomes the oppressor, we have a fucking
Well, I
problem.
don't think a revolution or like a revolt or a protest, even if it becomes violent, I don't think that creates like I don't think that flips the switch to like, oh, they're the oppressor now.
Well, that's
If slaves were to like all of a sudden like revolt and attack the house or the plantation or whatever, are they the oppressor now? No.
no, but that's how they're viewed.
Right, but that doesn't make it true.
I think it's funny how we always forget about the third party. It's like I'm neither of those things, and yet here I am caught in this battle.
To me, I think to me it just comes down to like there's a lot of like things we can like sit down and talk about and discuss and
Yes,
plan and do that, but there's also things that are just like we shouldn't have to talk about them. And to me, a lot of those things are like social issues, like rights. We could sit down and talk about, okay, what's a living wage? What constitutes a living wage? Should we have rent control? Should we have all this like actual political issues?
right.
You can sit down and talk about them all day long, and come to an agreement.
You,
But
you
when it
can
comes
if
to
you
like
if you have the things that we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, which is critical thinking skills.
right, so but when it comes to like social issues and rights and equality, to me, there's no like, oh, let's sit down and talk about how equal we should be. Like that shouldn't even be a thing. Like there is
Right.
no
I
compromise in that.
I agree. I agree. But the the black and white mentality that we have now is not serving us well. Not at all. It's either this or that, and that's
But
not how
what is the this or that?
exactly. And you've got the things that the people who are not involved in the situation are listening to people who maybe are, maybe not. Politicians, uh, these you got left wing political philosophers and right wing political philosophers, and everybody's in there throwing out their thing. And the way we grew up, or the way we were socialized, or the way we were victimized early in our lives may not have had anything to do with who's being victimized now, but we were like, yeah, I was a victim once in my life. I understand. So I'm going to listen to this guy. I'm going to listen to this guy say the third stimulus package wasn't necessary because most people had the money in the bank from the last two. And so somebody hears that and they're like, well, yeah, and that's so we shouldn't have done that third. And then along comes somebody based on that idea, and then they say, well, now we've got this $30 trillion debt and blah blah blah, and you keep building this argument. But the fact that you started the argument on most people had it still in the bank from the first two is not fucking true. So a lot of the things that people are hearing are based on arguments that don't even they're not true. Like remember in the you wouldn't remember. I'm sorry. In the late 70s and the 80s when gay clubs began to pop up and gay culture and Queen and all this thing, the argument was a lot of people, same argument with the trans people today, bro. As a matter of fact, a lot of gay people are just rapists. Well, that's not fucking true. But that's where the argument started. That's what people remember. And everything's based on that. Even if you don't remember the fucking argument to begin with, you got this feeling that gay people are rapists. So you're like, is that true? I can't verify that or not. I don't know any gay people. So now I have this thought in my head, this intrusive thought. Most gay people are rapists. Rapists don't deserve rights. So we leap to the conclusion based on false evidence that gay people don't need rights. So how can we stop this, Bran? How can we stop that? No, man, I know, man. It's fucking this whole situation that we're in, politically, socially, we're just fucked because all the media feeds us as these sensationalist ideas that most of them aren't true.
Well, I think we also have to start like recognizing that, because I mean, you kind of said it yourself. Like most people aren't like educated enough to kind of see through that like BS,
Right.
through all the, like the fake narratives and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
so
because
I
they
think it
didn't
kind of
want to
starts
they don't
there.
want to be saddled with a fucking debt of $100,000.
Yeah, so I think it starts there. Um, but I mean, I don't get me wrong. I do think it's a very like complicated like issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a complicated issue, but I do think there's simple solutions. We just don't do them,
Oh, I know. Isn't that?
because it's
Yeah.
very like because I mean, if you were to like, if someone was to fix all your problems, um, or like when politicians, they have this thought that if they were to actually like do what they said they were going to do, then you would have no use for them and no need to vote for them again, and that's why
Right.
they don't do anything,
Right. Because a revolutionary does not want his problem solved.
because they
The
want you to keep thinking that they're going to do something for you.
right. The constantly shifting narrative of the modern day revolutionary.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hey, man. I had to roll. I'm taking my kids out. I'm taking my wife, kid out to breakfast.
sounds good.
Hey, man. Thank you. See, that's what I think that the Thoroughly Wrong Project should be about: conflicting ideas and throwing this shit out there. And like you said, a lot of complicated problems or have simple solutions. Like, oh my god, I can't see in this fucking room, and I fell over, and the milk is spilled now, and the cat and the fucking well, flip the light on. That's the simple solution. Flip the light on. Now, how do we do that in a culture that's so blind right now? Flip the light on, man. We got to figure out a way to do it. And I keep saying every single episode, this is why I want to do what we do, because we need to bring the issues out and talk about them and stop yelling and stop blaming and stop with the fucking attacks. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about why you don't like trans people. Where did your fear come from? Where did your fear come from? And what fear do you have? So what is Donald Trump going to solve? And
Nothing.
what, the thing that I asked you the other day, those two questions: exactly what rights, what freedoms do you not have that you're talking about are being taken away from you? And let's talk about them logically and specifically. And number two, why is Donald Trump, how is he going to solve any of these specifically? And you need to listen to reasons that may or may not support your idea. And maybe you could paint your mind a different color if we do it, if we sit down across the table. And there's plenty of things on YouTube where they sit down six staunch Republicans and six radical Democrats, and they all talk across the table. And at the end of the video, they're friends. They're like, oh, I get it now. And that's cool. That's what we need to do. We need to talk it through. So, any last thought?
Uh, no, I mean, I think you kind of said it all right there.
Cool, man. Cool. So, um, if you think it, I'm going to push this out to my I'm going to push this out to some people that I think need to listen to it that don't agree with me, and see if I can't soften some minds a little bit. And I'll see you next week.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, man. And so far so good. This has been Bob.
And Lalo.
God damn, you're getting so good at that. 50 sometimes, and you're right on it, brother. All right. Respect you, man. Love you. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, man. Sounds good.
Later. You have now experienced the Thoroughly Wrong Project with your podcast hosts, Lalo and Bob. We can now be found on Pandora Radio, Apple Podcasts, Podium Podcast, or by searching the Thoroughly Wrong Project to locate our YouTube channel. You can contact us directly by email at thoroughly-wrong@gmail.com or just leave a comment on any of our platforms. Until next time, thanks for spending your valuable time with us, and remember, always speak up and never be afraid to be thoroughly wrong.